I love origin stories. You guys like origin stories? I like to know where my superheroes come from. I like to know where companies come from, where bands start up. For some reason, there's a lot of things that happen in garages, which my garage, all it does is collect dust and some random boxes in there. But apparently, other people's garages start things, so still looking for that. I really do like origin stories, though. I like to figure out, like, when is the moment that Nick Fury shows up and he's like, hey, you want to be an Avenger? And the person's like, yes, yes, I do. And that's their origin story, their background, starting into the whole process of who they become and who they became. Now, the interesting part is if you think of origin stories in that sense where someone invites someone else to something, like you have the lead singer that doesn't have a band yet, he just is a lone singer by himself. And then he starts to meet some musicians, and then they hang out in the garage and play instruments, and then he says, hey, we should actually do this, which I'm not sure that's the lingo that bands use. I'm not in a band, obviously. But somehow there's an invitation. Let's try to do this. There's a vision that's in place. There's a picture in place. There's an idea of what could be. And there's an invitation that someone steps forward and says, I want to invite all of us to do something about this. And the incredible part is that's very similar to what Jesus did a couple thousand years ago. Jesus is walking around and he's actually meeting these men and he's inviting them to follow him. He's inviting his disciples to become his disciples because he is a rabbi, a teacher of the law, a teacher without followers at this point, without disciples. There's not like people that are studying underneath him. And then he starts to invite these men to follow him, to become his disciples. Now, this is an interesting part because these men that he's inviting were not the best and the brightest. They'd already been passed over by other rabbis. You see, the way that schooling worked at the time, education worked at the time, it was so tied to the religious leaders of the day and the religious system of the day. So they learned like the Torah. They learned what we know as the Old Testament. And from a very, very young age, they started to memorize Scripture. By the time they're like 13 or 14 years old, if they had continued on with their schooling and hadn't dropped out by then or asked to step aside, why don't you go find your family trade? That's a good time for you. If that hasn't happened at this point, they're like 13, 14 years old. They're memorizing the entire Old Testament, not just like a couple verses, the whole thing. So I don't know what the effect of screens has done to my mind, but I can tell you I couldn't do that. That's a different level of intelligence and memorizing. It's incredible that these young kids and young students were able to do that. But eventually, they got to a point in an age where a rabbi recognized, I think that this young person could do what I do. I think that this person, they have what it takes to possibly, eventually, become a rabbi like me. And in that moment, at that age, the rabbi would invite this young child, this young student, this young teenager to follow him. And it wasn't just about learning what he knew. It wasn't just about knowledge and information. It was about changing your worldview to see the world like the rabbis saw the world. So it was different. And so these men that Jesus was inviting to come and follow him, they hadn't made the cut. They'd been asked to go do the family trade. That's why they're fishermen. That's why they're doing these other things. So Jesus is kind of coming along, and he's picking up the scraps. And he's asking these men, would you come and follow me? Full knowing that these men are going to be part of a revolution in the entire world. For the rest of the world, for the rest of eternity, they will have made a mark on the planet, and they were passed over. They were less than. They had been discounted, denied access to furthering their education. So this is a big deal, what Jesus is doing, inviting these men to come and follow him. There is a saying that was pretty familiar at the time around just disciples. It wasn't just Jesus' disciples, but all disciples. And the saying is, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. Which for us, this is confusing. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, you want to just get dirty so they have to like wash off because they weren't showers at the time. This is a confusing statement. But what this actually means is that it's a challenge and it's an encouragement to follow their rabbi, their leader, their teacher so closely. Remember, there's not like cars, so they're walking everywhere, right? They're getting dust that's kicked up from the pathways and from the walkways. that dust, that they would follow their rabbi so close that some of his dust would be on them. Just that something from the rabbi, from their teacher, from their leader, would make it onto and into them. I love this saying, because I believe that this is very, very similar to what God hopes for us as well. That we would follow so closely that we would start to become like him, that we would actually start to see the world like him, that we would get some of him on us, and that we would function that way for the rest of our lives. Now, these disciples, when they were going through this process, it was a roller coaster of a time. I mean, they're fishing with their dad one day, and the next day they're like following Jesus and watching him do miracles and signs and wonders, and he's asking them to like hand out some bread, and all of a sudden bread and fish like gets multiplied somehow, and they're part of this. They're handing it out. They're right in the middle of all of this. They start to believe that Jesus might actually be something more than just a good teacher. That maybe he possibly could be the one that he claims to be, the Messiah, the Son of God, the one that had been promised to come for generations and generations. And there's this roller coaster ride that they're on. High highs and low lows. I mean, like low lows, to the point where Jesus is crucified on the cross, and as he dies, the hope vanishes from their eyes, because a Messiah couldn't possibly die. He couldn't take over a world. He couldn't have military strength if he was dead. He couldn't be a political figure if he was dead. So low lows. And then he resurrects. And when he comes back to life, 3 days later, they realize it confirms every hope that they ever had. All of those hopes are revived and resurrected as well. And they believe more than any other time in their life, more than any other moment when they were watching Jesus do a miracle or a sign or a wonder, they believe that this man is exactly who he said he is. And they live the rest of their lives with that mentality. Jesus is the Messiah, and there's nothing that you could do to make them change their minds. You know how I know that? Because almost every single one of them was killed for their faith. Like the end of their lives happened because they refused to deny that Jesus was the Messiah. They wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't believe other. They wouldn't try to rework their wording to try to make it like water it down just to make somebody else happy. They're like, no, I cannot deny Jesus as the Son of God. And they took that to their death. When they were stoned to death, or they were crucified as well. They were brutally murdered, and they refused to take it back. Now, I don't know about you. What would it take for you to believe something so strongly that when someone's like, I'm going to throw this rock at you if you don't change your mind, I'd be like, I'm not sure. I definitely reconsider, right? It would give us pause for sure. That's how much these men believed in what they wrote down, what they witnessed, what they saw. That should give us confidence when we read through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, when we read through eyewitness accounts of who Jesus was, what Jesus did. It should give us confidence that Jesus is the Son of God. Now, the incredible part, Jesus extended an invitation to these men, and Jesus extends the same invitation to you and me. That we would follow him, that we would follow Jesus with our minds, with our eyes, with our mouths, with our feet, with our hands, with our heart. That's the invitation. Often we think, well, I just have to believe, I just have to say a prayer, and then we're good to go, and shake hands with God, and then we have the understanding of, we got punch the ticket to heaven, we're good to go. We can just kind of live life as we want. It's different, though, than that. That's the expectation, that's the assumption, but what he's asking us to do is to follow him. And that is different than just going on with our day. That means that our entire world is seen through a different lens. That we look and see people differently. That we see situations differently. Because we start to see the way that our Heavenly Father, that our Savior sees. For people that we love, for people that love us back, and for people that are very, should we say, difficult, challenging, extra grace required people in our life, that it's hard to love them, yet that's exactly what Jesus would do. He would extend love. He would extend grace. He would extend mercy. Why? Because they still have value. Now, there's a saying that happens, I've heard it a lot around financial conversations, and kind of it's this is not a verbatim, it's kind of this idea, this understanding, that in life, you can't wander your way out of being lost. So like financially, what you wander into, you cannot wander out of. If you wander into debt, which is really, really easy, there's systems in place to like put the breadcrumbs there just to try to lure us into debt, right? And sometimes then we get like overburdened with debt in our life. And it's like, how did I get here? I didn't even know. When I was in Bible college, I had my first checking and savings and credit card, like all at once. I 18 years old. And I knew that my checking account was backed up by my credit card. And I thought I was doing a pretty good job until I got a bill. And I was like, oh, no. I was overdrawn and had been for a while. And I had like a couple $100s I had to pay off. You can wander in really, really easy into debt. But what you wander into, you cannot wander out of debt. You don't accidentally like just wake up one day and be like, what happened? My debt is all gone? I paid that off. I didn't even realize it. I wasn't even trying. That's not how it works. It's not how life works. Similar with following Jesus, right? You don't accidentally wander into following Jesus. Why? Because Jesus and the pathway and the direction that he would have for us to follow him, it goes against our humanity. It goes against what we do naturally. Because naturally, we put ourselves as the highest priority. I'm really good at seeing myself as the most important person in the room. I'm really good at seeing my decision and my preference as the highest priority. You know what's really hard? To put myself down, put somebody else up. That's hard. To serve somebody else, that's not fun. I want to be served. I don't want to serve. But Jesus' example and what he called us to do was to serve others, not to be served. That's what he did. That's how he lived his life out. When you read through the Gospels, you see this over and over and over again. When you think about being generous costs us something. Being generous is not something that's like you just flip in. It's like, oh yeah, I got some spare change on the floor of my truck. Throw that at you. That's not generosity. You're just cleaning. That's all you're doing. You know what generosity is? Figuring out to give towards somebody or something to the point that it feels like you're losing something. That's generosity. Where it stings because you're going to have to sacrifice somebody else or something else in order to give that amount. That's generosity. Where you're going to have to give so much of your time, you're not going to be able to sit in front of your TV, you're going to miss your show. Oh no. That's being generous with your time. It costs you something. Now, the past, our existence of Canyons Church, we've had one single mission statement. It was this: leading people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. And I love this statement. I've preached on this statement over and over again. This morning, we're making a shift. And this has happened over the last several years. It's kind of my language and how I've been taught and what I've been seeing. And really something has shifted inside of me. And I believe that it's shifting for us. It's not a change or a different mission statement. It's a refine. It's a refining experience that we're trying to talk about. Because words matter. So we need to get into the absolute, as accurate, as pointed, as easy to remember as possible with our words, right? And when it comes to our mission statement, words matter. This is the direction the ship is heading. Right? You talk about mission statement, and it's like, that's where the rudder's pointed in the ship. You talk about strategy and like approach to ministry, that's your sales. That's like how fast you move, how fast you can turn, all that stuff. That's approach, that's strategy. Your mission statement is the rudder. That is the direction that you're heading. So I don't take an adjustment to our mission statement lightly. This is a big deal. These words matter. But this is going to be our new mission statement I'm really excited about. Inspire people to follow Jesus. This is why we exist. We exist at Canyons Church to inspire people to follow Jesus. That's why we're here. That's why the doors are open on Sundays. That's why we ask volunteers to volunteer. That's why we try to do whatever we can to make an impact in our community, because we want to inspire people that may not currently be following Jesus or may not even know Jesus at all to follow him, to make an impact in lives in order to move in a direction. That this is not stationary. Right? This is not a one and done, like I said, it's not just a handshake and then leave and move on and be like, I punched my ticket to heaven. Thank you very much. I'm on my way. My idea, my attitude has changed. My belief has changed, but I'm good to go. No, following Jesus costs you something. Following Jesus is a directional shift in your life where you start to see the world different. You start to see people different as well. You know, there's this moment with Jesus in the upper room, and I know I talk about this fairly regularly because it's a big moment. But there's this moment in the upper room. Jesus and the disciples are celebrating the Passover. And they're having this meal together. The Passover is supposed to be this remembrance of God saving the nation of Israel out of slavery in Egypt. So they're trying to have this meal, trying to remember what God did and be grateful for that. And Jesus, in this moment, with all eyes of the disciples on him, he makes the moment about him, which from like a bystander at that moment, if you were in the room and like couldn't be seen or respond, you'd be like, that's blasphemy, right? That's blasphemy. We don't, like, that's a big deal. What he's doing right now goes against everything that they were taught as good Jewish boys and girls. Like you didn't do that. You didn't do that. But Jesus in this moment is like, no. When you do this, remember me. As you do this, remember me. Remember what I'm about to do. This moment is a big moment. And when he has all of their eyes on him, when he has their full attention, every single person's like, what is he going to say next? What is he going to do? Jesus drops this bomb. He presents one command, one singular command. If you're going to follow me, this is a new command that I give you. A new command I give you. Love one another. That seems pretty simple. That seems pretty easy. That seems like a pretty low rung on the ladder. But he continues. He says, love one another as I have loved you. Now this is, if you don't know, this is like hours before he's arrested and he's going to be crucified very soon. He's telling them, hey, remember this moment. Watch what I do, because this is how you love somebody. As I have loved you, that's how I'm asking you to love one another. So you must love one another. He actually continues on in verse 35. He says, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. You want other people to know that you're following me? That's how. This is how. If you are following me, if you are my disciple, you love people the way that I love you. You sacrifice for people the way that I sacrifice for you. Now, we don't live in a context where we are asked to sacrifice our life for what we believe. Thank goodness. We don't live at the same time. But this moment, this level of sacrifice and devotion, if you're going to follow Jesus, it's going to look like something. It's going to require action. It's going to require a change of what is natural and normal for you. It's going to require love, first and foremost. When you look at his statement, when you look at what Jesus taught, this is always the underline, this is always the foundation from where he's preaching from where he's teaching from. His words, his actions are tied to this every single time. Are your words and actions tied to love every single time? Because I know mine aren't. But I try so hard because I know that this is the priority. If I'm going to follow Jesus, it looks like love because it is love. It's not just memorizing scripture. It's not just having like 10 Bibles that you can pull out in different versions. It's not just church attendance. It's not just giving a full tithe of 10%, like, look, I'm a good Christian because I give 10% of my income. That's not what Jesus says. That's not what Jesus taught. It's about love. It's about following Jesus. Now, all of those things, I believe 100%, would help you love better. Every single one of those. Showing up to church on a regular basis helps. It helps encourage you, helps challenge you, surrounds you with people that are moving in the same direction you are. That helps. You know, giving, that helps a lot. prioritizing somebody, something else over ourselves, that makes me a little bit more like Jesus. Every single time, it's a little bit more like Jesus, where I bring myself down as not the most important. Something else, someone else is. Reading the Bible, very important, not the point. Reading the Bible helps you become like Jesus. So, what does that look like in your life? There's a couple questions. I'm not going to answer them, but do you have to do something in order to love someone? Can you actively love someone without any actions? Ooh, that doesn't feel good. We'll just leave them up there for a little while longer, though. Jesus' example, it's not based on a feeling. It's not based on an emotion. It's action. It's a decision. It's a choice that you make. I'm going to choose love in my life. And you know what love looks like? It looks like sacrifice. It looks like serving. It looks like generosity. I'm going to choose to prioritize other people and other things in my life above myself. That's what it comes down to. Now, people know that you love them when they see love in your actions towards them. Think about a marriage relationship. I've heard people say this. Well, I told you I loved you before. You're like, I will tell you if it changes. That doesn't work out very well, does it? There's a consistent communication that has to happen, but also action has to happen. If your actions don't look like you're communicating to them that you love them, you got some work to do. It won't be fun in the marriage. And to be honest with you, over time, if that's the end result, it's going to end. There's going to be an end date to it, because at some point someone's going to say, "This is not worth it. I just feel beat up all the time. I don't feel loved." In your relationship, when you prioritize love, you speak it and you act upon it. You act upon it. In context of our church, Canyon's church in this community, we love the LC Valley so much. We believe that God has placed us in this community on purpose and for a purpose. There's a lot of people, surprisingly, there's a lot of people in the valley, in the area. The surrounding community, they're looking at the studies, there's about 40,000 people that would tell you that they are not connected to any church or religion. In essence, either they don't believe in God or they feel like they're far from God. They're living apart from community of faith. Whether they disagree with it altogether, don't believe it, or isolated somehow. That's our key demographic that we want to impact. We want to impact 40,000 people. And well, they will not fit in this room. I'll tell you that much. But we want to make a difference. How do you make a difference? How do you make an impact? It's not by me just standing up on my soapbox, screaming and shouting. It's by going out into our community and making a felt difference, making an impact. There's a question that really, honestly, it keeps me up at night. If Canyon's church disappeared, would our community miss us? If Canyon's wasn't here, we didn't exist, all of a sudden, it just got wiped off the face of the map, would we be missed? Would our community stand up and say, what happened to that church? Even the people that don't attend and have never walked through our doors, would they be upset? That's my hope. My hope is that we do enough in this community that people that don't even go to church are like, I don't know what they do, what they talk about, but what they're doing in this community is so important, we have to have them here. Our community, our world is better with that organization in our midst. Now, I know that this question, it can sound a little bit like an insecure, fishing for a compliment, are we? But honestly, this is the question that keeps me up at night. It's not about fishing for a compliment. It's about making sure that we are doing what we've been called to do, what God has tasked us to do, what He's asked us to do, which leads right in to our ForLCV initiative. Like I said at the very beginning, you've wandered in here, whether you knew it or not, onto one of our favorite days all year long at Canyon's Church. That we, in this time of year, every single year, we decide to do whatever we can to give, serve, and love, to unleash a wave of generosity in our community, to do whatever it takes to make an impact. That our church exists to do something outside of our church. So I'm going to actually have Michelle come on up. We've once again decided to partner with the LC Valley Youth Resource Center. And this is an incredible, incredible organization. They've not been around too long, 18 months, 2 years? 2 years. So they're really still getting their feet underneath them. But it is phenomenal what they're doing. And I've asked Michelle to share a little bit about kind of a broad overview as well as some stories and kind of what's going on over there. That helps.
Yep, okay, test. Oh, there we are. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me here. My name is Michelle King, and as Andrew said, I'm with the LC Valley Youth Resource Center. I brought notes to help me stay on track, so I'm going to set these here, so please don't think me rude when I go reference them. But I also have a timer. Because I do tend to be a bit long-winded. So if you see me look at my watch, I'm just checking to make sure I'm not taking your whole day. This is kind of an interactive part of the morning. Raise your hand if you know what the LC Valley Youth Resource Center is. Okay, lots of hands. Thank you. For those who don't know, the Youth Resource Center is over in Lewiston. We serve Lewiston and Clarkston students ages 12 to 17 who are either displaced or distressed. Let me explain what that means. Displaced, homeless, have no resources, 12-year-olds. Distressed. Okay, every single teenager is distressed at some point, right? But these are kids without a place to take a shower, no food. I want to say thank you specifically in this moment. Canyons Church, you may not know this. I don't know if Andrew told you. So last year there were some contributions to build a jam room at the youth center. We turned the youth that jam room into what's about to open as an assessment center where we'll be able to do screenings to help identify kids who are suicidal, need help with addiction and recovery, have mental health needs, and so on and so forth. So that left the money that was for the instruments to be used to buy school clothes. So one of our kiddos, I got to take the kids, not a lot of shopping left in our valley, so we took them to Maurice's, right? But they got to have a custom shopping guide for their little shopping experience. And we didn't spend a ton of money. I think we spent $200 per kid, which is pretty conservative if you bought school clothes recently. But one of our kids had never been to a store that had new clothes. Another one had never been to a store where they didn't have to watch the price tags. And this is a kid who always wore black hoodie, black leggings, black hoodie, black leggings, black shoes, black hoodie, black leggings, right? And I said, you know what? Don't look at the price tag. Go find what feels good. Guess who bought a silver sweater? I was just so happy. I don't care that she wears black, but she was just, she went and she had a moment and she felt good in her skin. One of our kiddos who got to do that experience shared that they had never had new school clothes. Their family had been, it was like scraping to buy the stuff that they had to have on the checklist to not get in trouble when they went to school, because if you don't have the right school supplies, you're disciplined for that. Does everybody know that? So you punish kids who've got nothing. It's kind of weird. This kiddo got to have a new backpack, new shoes, new clothes, and every school supply they needed, and that's because of your generosity. So give yourselves a hand. So the Youth Resource Center, we open at 2:30 every day. Kids come, they grab a snack, they use the Wi-Fi, they socialize, they play some video games. If they do homework, we give them candy bars and gift cards, because a coffee card will get you to do 5 homework assignments, let me just tell you, right? And then at 6 o'clock, we serve dinner. I'm going to come back to the dinner thing. After dinner, we say, okay, who needs a safe place to stay tonight? And we can host up to 16 kids. We have 3 kids that live with us full-time right now. We have 12 more that come and go depending on the storms of life. I'm going to use some stereotypical scenarios, but we do see them a lot. If a parent is in recovery, part of recovery is relapse. So when the parent relapses, the kid's with us. When the parent is successful in their recovery, the kid's back with the parent. But that can be kind of a bounce back and forth, so we're that safety net for that kiddo. Sorry, this is going to be really stereotypical, but mom's back with that dangerous guy, kid's got a safe place to go. When mom's back in a safe space, kids back with their safe. The state doesn't get involved in this dance. It's just, okay, today I need safety, and that's what the Youth Resource Center offers. And then we close every morning. So kids go to school, and then on Saturdays and Sundays, kids go meander about. That keeps us in compliant with the state of Idaho. But again, we open 2:30. We're open Christmas, Thanksgiving, and. Going back to dinner for a second. So our staff is incredible at working with kids. And since the first of the year, we've had 21 times where our team was invited into the moment when a child decided between life and suicide. In the 16 months prior to that, we had had 7. So we've seen 3 times the 16-month average in 10 months. And talk about messy miracles. I can be pretty tough when I'm standing there facing off with somebody who's, abusing their child or neglecting their child or, wanting to take advantage of a child. I'm ferocious. God put that in me. In the moment when a kid comes into my arms and says, I can't go one more day. And I melt with them and I wrap my arms around them and I hold them and I say, here's hope. You're safe. I care about you. You matter. And tomorrow you matter. So don't you dare give up, because I'll hold your hand till we're through this fire. And I get the kid in the shower or off to bed, and then I go off and I bawl my eyes out and I get on my face before God and say, why did that baby have to go through what got him to that moment? And you, by God, Lord, better carry him through the next 10 moments to get to the other side. All 21 of those kids are still with us, you guys. So give God a hand for that. Okay, so we talked about dinner. Our staff is really good at these other moments, not so much cooking. Okay? So one of our team members who cooks dinner on Saturday, yesterday, he explained that he was very excited. He managed to make minute rice, orange chicken, the box out of the freezer at Costco, and egg rolls, also out of the freezer at Costco. But the complication was that the orange chicken and the egg rolls had 2 different heat settings in the oven, and he really wasn't quite sure what to happen there. So if you can cook, please, God, save us. Because everybody's got a gift, and that just doesn't seem to. We have one of our staff. We have 7 people on our staff. One of them knows how to cook. So please sign up for that. I want to share with you a little story about when I was here last year. We kind of talked a little bit about the kiddos who come. And we take 12 to 17-year-olds. And we had a kid who had just turned 12 when I was here last time. And 12-year-olds are obnoxious, okay? They're high energy, no focus, and like to shoot lots of Nerf bullets that are hard to find. And I love them. But on Thanksgiving night, shortly after I was here, we had just a couple kids come and eat dinner with us, but there was nobody spending the night. And those are really quiet nights for our staff. But at 12:30 in the morning, the doorbell rang, and it was this 12-year-old. And he was crying and freshly beaten. Mom had left town for the weekend and left his 14-year-old brother in charge of him. 14-year-old brother decided to celebrate the holiday by beating up his little brother. And so the little guy came fleeing to us in the middle of the night. And our staff, you should see JD, he's this big guy, right? He just wraps that little baby up in a warm blankie, tucks him into bed, and says, you're safe. Kiddo spent the 4 days of the Thanksgiving weekend with us because Mom was out of town and unreachable. Kid was with us all the way through Christmas, off and on, going back to Mom's, but then a lot of time with us. And then on January 2nd, Mom died suddenly. Now, older brother is 14 years old, so the little guy's like, well, now older brother is all I've got, so I'm going to go with him. Went to the house where older brother was staying. Older brother and his friends left him covered in bruises again. So now he's orphaned and beaten and 12 years old. And he comes back to us and he says, I guess I got to drop out of school. I guess I got to get a job. I said, well, what do you know how to do? He goes, I don't know. I'm 12. I said, I know. You're going to school. We'll find you some adults. If nobody else comes along, we're just going to hold on to you. What are you thinking? So we wrapped up around that baby, working with CPS and law enforcement and everybody trying to contact family. Somebody needed to come take care of this poor kiddo. But it took them 4 days. And so 4 days, we just held on tight and didn't let go. Grandma was able to come down from the prairie and pick him up. 4 days later, it turned out it had been some transportation issues and so on and so forth, which next time we're going to communicate better about those things. But I got to see that little guy a week ago. Guess who's got peach fuzz? He's going to be okay. And he's with his family now, and he knows that no matter what happens, we're there for him. So thank you for your support and helping us be there for the lost, be there for the least of these. You know, we sang the song about leaving the 99. No shadow you won't light up, no wall you won't kick down, no mountain you won't climb up. That's what my team does at the Youth Resource Center for these kids. So thank you, because we get to be the hands and feet that shine that light into those dark moments.
Thank you, Michelle.
And I didn't even look at my notes.
You did great.
Okay.
Here, I'll take that. Good job. You can see why we want to partner with them. You know, in an ideal world, they don't need to exist. We don't live in an ideal world. We live in a broken world. And unfortunately, we live in a world where some kids that can't make it on their own have some people, like Michelle and her team, that are able to come alongside and make sure that they make it through the dark of the night. So we love that we get to partner with them. It's a growing relationship that we have with them, and it is one that I'm so excited that we get to support them this way. And this morning, we have a very unique opportunity to be the answer to a lot of prayers. I don't think we normally live our life trying to be the answer to some people's prayers. We don't walk around thinking, I wonder what someone's praying for right now that I could do on their behalf. I can tell you right now that there's a lot of people that have been praying for those kids, and we can do something about it to the point that they will get their prayers answered by our support. So here's the nuts and bolts of what we're trying to do. First of all, financially. These are some needs that they have. They mentioned that it would be really nice to have a vehicle as they run all over the valley and run all everywhere to try to be able to transport kids and pick kids up and do that. So that's a need. They obviously have a facility that needs some upkeep. It needs to be taken care of. It needs some things to be replaced on it. So that's another big need. And this might be the biggest need of all, and it's not the one that's fun to talk about the most. I can tell you from running an organization here, talking about bills, not very much fun. It's not very fun to fundraise about bills. Like, oh, you have a monthly bill. Cool, that's great. No, that's not fun. However, and this is the reality, it's kind of like when someone is drowning, the first rule is that you're not also drowning. You have to make sure that you are a safe place before you can actually jump in and try to save the other person. And that's what bills are, because they will sink organizations very quickly. So we want to make sure that they have breathing room, that they have the opportunity to take care of some bills, some financial needs that they have. You know, whether it be the assessment room and some things that they need there, whether it be other, air conditionings, whatever it might be, they need to have some funding. So we want to make as big of an impact there as we possibly can. Now, previous years I've talked about, and it's kind of silly and gimmicky, but for $39.99, you can, we've done that literally. We're just asking for $39.99. Reason why we ask the number, because most people, not everybody, but most people can walk through a store and they see something that they like, and for $39.99, they don't think twice about throwing it in the basket, the cart, and taking it up to the register. Right? That's a doable amount. I'm not asking for doable this morning. I'm asking for something more. I'm asking for something that's going to feel. Because if we just did $39.99 and everybody participated, that's great, but we wouldn't leave as much of an impact as I know and I believe that God has called us to. I would like to challenge you, whatever it might be. Maybe it is $39.99, maybe it's $20, maybe it's $200, maybe it's $2,000. Remember I talked about earlier that generosity is truly a moment that feels like it's costing you something. That you're going to have to, shift and adjust your finances for a little bit in order to make that all work. That's what I'm going to ask. That you would give something that feels like generosity. So we have some ways to do that. You can give online, canionschurch.net. If you go there, you can adjust and make sure that you select the ForLCV fund on there. If you have our church app, you go to your app center, whatever it might be, and you download the Church Center app, and then you find Canyons Church in Clarkson, Washington. Select that as your home church, and then you have access to all kinds of stuff. It's great. But that's a really easy and good way to give as well. You can also give with a check or cash. I mean, we have a box out there that will absolutely fit cash and checks in it. So if that's the route that you'd like to take, please do that. If you want to think about it a little while and you want to mail us a check, we will take that also. 100% of every single dollar, every single cent that comes in goes right back out. So you don't have to worry about well, are they taking? No, we're just doing that. For your participation, we want everybody to participate. It doesn't matter how much or how little it is. We just want you to be generous in this way. If you participate, you get one of these shirts today. So that's pretty fun. We're going to do it on the honor system. We're just going to trust you. You give. You just tell it to one of the guest services out in the lobby, and they'll give you the shirt size that you need. A couple other ways that we're going to do this. And so that's the give part. Like I said, give, love, and serve. The service days that we're going to try to take care of. We have a work day planned on November 5th from 9 to noon. We'll have a barbecue at the end. That's a Saturday. So please sign up for that. It's just a few hours of your time. We're going to make a big difference in the area, make sure that it feels clean, that the facility is clean, that these kids show up, and it's not something that feels like, all of their energy as far as their volunteers have gone to the kids, because it has, which means that a facility starts to be like, oh, well, that needs to be clean, and that needs to be clean, and we can do that for them to allow them to do what's most important. So bring some work clothes to that, sign up for that. Also, they need some people to go and sort through some clothes, because they've gotten a lot of clothes donated, which is great, but they need some people to sort through it, organize it, make sure that the kids are getting the right clothes, all that. So that we're going to need some people to do that as well. And then the Wednesday dinners. So kind of like what Michelle shared, meal prep is not a highly skilled opportunity that they have there. So if you would like to, and we want to try to do this as much as possible, we want to take Wednesdays for them and just do a day a week where we can provide some meals for them, which means that you show up, you prep the meal, you make the meal, you serve. I think they said plan for about 8 kids. And then you can sit there and be there with them, serve the kids, eat the meal with them, and then clean up afterwards. It's pretty simple. It's pretty easy. It's not going to cost you a lot. We can pay for the food and all that, but we have to make it at the property. And we also can't bring fresh fruits or veggies in as well. It has to be store-bought. But we want to try and take Wednesday dinners. So I have, for the next quarter of the year, through the end of this year and a little bit into January, I believe, all of those Wednesday dates are on a sign-up sheet out there. The thing is, they don't want 20 people there at the same time. It's a bit overwhelming for kids that are going through some stuff. So right up to about 4 people per sign-up per day. So sign up. Once it's full, it's full. If there's 2 people, go ahead and put your name on there too. But if there's 4, move on to a different day. We want to take all the Wednesdays that we possibly can. We'll keep on doing this throughout the year. So be looking forward to that. And then the love part, so give, serve, and love. We will talk about more about that, how we're going to do that in the weeks coming. But for this morning, sign up to volunteer, and then open up your checkbook, open up your wallet, open up your heart, and give towards something that I believe that we can make an impact in, and I believe that God has asked us to. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to let you go do it. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything that you do for us. God, you are so good. You are so good. And even in our deepest, darkest moments, you are there with us. And in these moments with these kids, you are there in their midst. You are there every single moment. And you've provided people in their life to be able to stand with them, to be able to wrap them up in a blanket and love them. You've provided relationship for them to know that they have a place to go in this valley. That when life gets hard, there is someone present that will be there. God, I pray that you would pour out your blessings upon the LC Valley, the Youth Resource Center. I pray that this wouldn't just be a drop in a bucket, but it would question whether the bucket can hold everything that's being poured into it. God, I pray that you would pour out what only you can pour out, and that's above and beyond any expectation. God, it's not about a number. It's about a heart shift, moving, following you. And today we know exactly what following you looks like. It looks like being generous. It looks like spending some of our time with some kids that need it. So God, I pray that you would shift something in us and give us the boldness and the courage to do something about it. We love you, Lord. In your name I pray. Amen. Thanks for being here. Like I said, a lot of opportunities are out there. Coming back next week, my wife will be preaching, so you're not going to want to miss that. We'll see you then.